Okay.
Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I'm pleased to present two people who can speak volumes about at least two topics that occupy a lot of my headspace. That's concert ticketing and jam bands, among many other things. I promise you will leave today smarter and more inspired than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. And in this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the session. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our sponsors for without their support, we could not keep this series free. Special thanks to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, MedJet, Tennessee Brew Works, and Better Than Booze. So let's get down to business. Today, I am excited to introduce Brando Rich. He is the CEO and co-founder of Cash or Trade, one of the coolest and most needed ticketing platforms in the world. In 2009, when his and my favorite band Phish returned to touring, Brando and his brother became frustrated by trying to obtain tickets. So they set out to build a global movement of fans devoted to face value ticketing. And as there was no more standing in line at brick and mortar box offices and ticketing became primarily online, they saw brokers were sophisticated and with high volume software and scalper bot programs buying up large volumes of tickets and relisting them for exorbitant prices. The brothers realized how the ticketing industry lacked transparency and most of all, trust. Today, Cash or Trade is a global face value movement with over 1 million fans spanning 46 countries and more. The company has grown to 30 passionate employees and has brought on a number of powerful investors and advisors, including executives from global brands, artist and venue management, ticketing platforms, and NBA sports teams. Welcome, Brando. It is a pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Appreciate it.
And joining Brando is Pat May. Pat co-founded Crossover Touring in 2013, aiming to collaborate with artists who share a common thread, and that is exceptional musicianship, phenomenal live performances, the ability to transcend influences, cross-genre boundaries, and build sustainable, dedicated communities of fans. Pat's passion for music was sparked by his mother, a piano teacher who offered him an electric bass instead of a class rig. Necessity led him to book gigs for bands he played in and eventually managing a small club in Burlington, Vermont. This experience solidified his desire to become a full-time booking agent, and in 2002, he was hired by Skyline Music, where he honed his skills for a decade before co-founding his own company, Crossover Touring. Fiercely supportive of independent venues, Pat was awarded Best Artist Development by an Agent by the National Independent Venue Association in 2022. This accolade recognized his work with Billy Strings, whom he discovered in June of 2014. Billy was named Best New Headliner at the 2022 Pollstar Awards and Breakthrough Artist of the Pandemic at the 2021 Pollstar Awards, among several other honors. It is my pleasure to welcome these two rock stars to our platform today. Take it away, boys.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
That's pretty
Hey,
great.
Brando.
What's up, dude? How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. It's going
Liking the
great.
beard.
Same. Same. That is, the beard has always been for me. And I think for you.
Uh, how we are in Vermont, I
It's a
guess.
Vermont trait. That's what I was gonna say. I think it's a Vermont trait.
Certainly
Maine,
is.
Vermont.
Yeah, I haven't seen my face in years.
Well,
But
speaking of years, we were reminiscing about your first Gorge show in
yeah,
1997.
yeah.
Um,
I've only been to Gorge once. And it was funny. We were out there climbing the Wind River Range in Wyoming, and we planned to do a summer trip, and we summited the two highest mountains in Wyoming, and then drove out to the gorge. But we got there a day early, and I think Ice-T was playing, and we weren't really sure like who was playing and what was going on, but we had to learn the ropes of making veggie burritos and swinging on lots so we could, make money to go to the next show. Our first real tour that year. And yeah, we made up some veggie burritos, but the iced tea crowd wasn't so interested in veggie burritos after the show. But we worked it. We found a way to get them sold and make the money for the next event. So that's my gorge story.
oh,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, besides just understanding the scale of human existence when you are in that venue, I think the best part of my trips there is always getting there because you pass through so many climates. Um, from departing the Seattle airport and your drive out there, it's just a fascinating experience to witness that
Yeah.
um, the different types of climates in such a short uh, drive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's beautiful.
but but that was early in 97, so like we were in Vermont at the same time back then, and I was that was what, I guess I was a junior in college. I'm going into my senior year. So
Yeah.
I still I mean I was seeing fish pretty heavily then, but maybe not as heavily as some of my friends. Um
Yeah.
that was a big fall, that's for sure. No, I was very active that fall. Uh
Oh, yeah. For sure. Yeah. I landed in Johnson, Vermont in 96. Well, when were you there?
yeah, I went up there, started school there the fall of 94.
94. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just kind of stayed, you know,
Yeah. It's,
just
it
stayed
was
there. I was in
it was
Johnson 20 years, I think. Waterville a little bit, next door, but yeah, and then and then finally came to Burlington. But when did you leave Vermont?
I was there until '06, and I would have been there forever. Um, I had find I by then I had started, by the end of my time there, I'd started booking bands. So I had found a job that I could be remote. Um, but my wife at the time was my girlfriend, but she was struggling finding some work there because, you living in Vermont, no, it's not a
Yeah,
huge job market there. So we were thinking about moving to New York City, and um, out of the blue, she got an opportunity to get a decent job back in Maine. So we moved back to Maine, which I never imagined I was going to come back to Maine, but I did, and I'm very glad.
yeah,
So um, moved back to Portland in 2006.
yeah.
But
Nice. So let's jump back to those early days, though.
yeah,
Lamoille County, Vermont was an absolute special place on this planet during that
it,
time.
it was a hotbed of musical activity. I feel it was a community in a community. I mean, it was a really, really special time. Um, I I wasn't I was trying to remember exactly when I intersected with the Liquid Dead guys. And I think it was sort of, I was playing with this guy, Mr. Charlie, Blues for Breakfast.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's how I linked up with maybe Trevor at some point. He came out and played some drums for us, and of course, Seth was a phenomenon back then in our town. Like, he was the guy. Uh,
Yeah,
and
drum.
I got invited to play. I think we played a party up at Dibden, It's kind
Yeah.
of like was my baptism into the Johnson world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Liquid Dead had a bass player um already at that time, but I think he moved away.
Yeah.
And so those guys called me, and I got to start playing a little bit more with them, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some
So like I graduated Johnson State in like 2000 and started a web design company with Dusty. So we were there during those times and saw the beginning of Liquid Dead. I mean, I think the liquiddead.com was one of the first websites I ever
That's
built.
right.
Really.
That's right. You did
I
build our
remember we
first
had
you.
some girl with dreads like spinning in the corner.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That was
So
awesome.
yeah, I mean, not only were you all our friends, but we were like managing the website and taking photos and stuff. It was like free, like I mean, early internet. So that was pretty fun. And yeah, Trevor Ainsworth on drums and Seth Yak with guitar and Toby Niffen on guitar, Bry Laurie on keys. Still, that group gets together and plays up here in Lamoille County now and then, and the same old people still come out to see it. So it's absolutely amazing. Um, and yeah, speaking of '98, that's when Seth Yakovone played with Fish, I think, at Worcester Central.
That's
Uh,
right.
Probably the best Layla I've ever seen.
No,
I'll
that
never
was a
forget
really good
that.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was funny too. I don't know if you listened to any of those recent interviews with Trey, because he was talking about the power of the community that they had, or like, and I don't know if this was unique to our area in Vermont or whatever, but it really was the musicians and the people that were music fans, or just that like live music. It really was a powerful community of people, and it and it was definitely, Fish was a big part of that in the Vermont scene, but there were other like branches of it as well, whether it was sort of the jazz scene, like for a town in the, a very non-urban setting town, there was a really strong jazz scene in Vermont.
Hmm.
And funny enough, like bluegrass wasn't like a really big thing back then. There wasn't like a ton of bluegrass going on, except for the fact that you had a couple. Jenny Brook was a bluegrass festival in Vermont, and that's been around for a long time. And then you had,
Belvedere
yeah,
Bluegrass Fest. Yeah.
yeah, and but it wasn't so ubiquitous in the kind of world that we were in yet, until guys like Gordon Stone really brought it to our attention,
That's
and
right.
Doug
That's
Perkins.
Perkins. Yeah.
Doug Perkins was the first guy I saw on guitar, and I was like, "This is another level guitar playing here on
Yeah.
acoustic."
Yeah. And then
And
of course our good friends from the Mud City Ramblers, crushing
absolutely,
it. Every party, every bar, um, all the heckling included.
yeah,
Luke Ariemo, who plays in Beg Steal or Borrow now. He's
yeah.
actually building a roof in my house right now too. So Luke is
Oh,
still
that's
around,
perfect.
crushing it. They did a ton of Blue Belvedere Bluegrass Festival. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean the bar, the Lion's Den, like everybody like skied for like 3/4 time. you know, Everyone was a part-time farmer growing whatever you were growing. Um, Everyone had their hands in the soil with something, and then music, and it was awesome. It was a magnificent time, and it makes me think of like Johnson State really bred a lot of great musicians, and they scaled across well through Burlington and Nectar's, and there was like a good mix of musicians between like Lamoille County and Burlington, I felt. Um, and a lot of those people ended up in like pretty successful bands over the years, and So that, yeah, that's what we grew out of, really, right? So those,
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned Grace Potter, who used to play the place that I booked, Halverson's.
mm,
And when she started playing there, her uncle was booking her. And I mean, she would play to 13 people. And I remember he was always like, "Yeah, you got to book my niece's band." And at the time, I was like, "All right, I booked them in next, you know." But at the time, I had started also booking bands nationally, and I was like, "Yeah, Grace Potter, I don't know." Fast forward a couple of years, and she's a very well known, highly successful recording and touring artist, and Grace has done really great things to kind of to put that same kind of Vermontness out there that
yeah,
is unique to that state. That's really um, the music that comes out of there is always, and it doesn't matter about the genre. I just think people come out of that state with a really great outlook on life.
absolutely. I mean, I think back to those days, I came to Vermont for like environmental science and wanting to, be in a more country atmosphere. I mean, I just came from New Hampshire, so it wasn't far. But no, around that time, like everybody came gathered off tour and landed in northern Vermont. And yeah, I think my parents dropped me off at college and I like said hi to my roommate and was like, I'm going to the Clifford Ball. So we just like I like dropped my bag, said bye mom and dad, and like went over to Plattsburgh for the Clifford Ball and had the first fish festival. And that
Yeah,
started it all.
well, yeah, that was a momentous occasion because there really wasn't. I mean, aside from I can't remember the exact year that Coachella started, but there really wasn't the big scale European festival model, of 60,000 people happening in
Yeah.
America at that time. So that was the first time,
Just
on an
one.
airstrip, you know,
Yeah.
the
The
last time
old
I ever
days
slept on concrete.
when it was just one lot, you
Yeah.
know, not all these partitioned different lots, making it very hard to, you know, sum up a large party. Instead, it was just one big rectangle filled from party to party to party. And you could just go with your skateboard or bike or walk or whatever and just discover, you know. It's not quite that way anymore.
No. And I haven't really stared at the Mondegreen map, but I don't think they're going to have that still at that location. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. But
Yeah.
that you're right about the fact that the fish festivals, everything was connected. So it didn't matter where you were, you could get to anywhere without too much, with your 2 feet, if it so be it. But yeah, bike would be great. And
Yeah.
and that was really there wasn't any segregation really.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. And then
want
there
to give a
was
go ahead.
and then there was Bread and Puppet.
Oh right.
Or Bread and Puppets, this great little theater group in the Northeast Kingdom, and that's been going on for years. Very politically charged, and in these beautiful fields, they put on these puppet shows, massive puppets. But people started getting turned on to Bread and Puppet after those shows because everyone was like rolling off a tour, and then like it's like where we go now, people went there, and then I feel like people just kind of start to settle, like Montgomery and Jay Peak and like everybody in just the northern Vermont, just like all these folks off a tour who are all became our great friends. We all were just kind of like, okay, here we are.
No, absolutely. Kind of like it definitely was hectic. Like after Fish Tour in Burlington, people would just go up there and spend some time. Um, I have some really fond memories of the Vermont Reggae Fest. Also, just
Mhm. Yeah,
one of the groundbreaking, awesome reggae festivals that were out there. Um, and just bringing like top level international reggae artists to the middle of nowhere,
Yeah,
Vermont,
totally.
no middle of nowhere. I mean,
I-
to arguably one of the whitest states in the country,
Uh-huh.
and just bringing, I mean, Sister Carol and Anthony B and
Yeah, oh, yeah.
just some really big names that were there.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and the Rusty
but
Nail show would continue, like lots of reggae artists there. Yeah.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we were lucky, man. I mean, we were lucky for to be so, you know, in the middle of nowhere to have like such a great deep music scene. Killer.
and I mean, listen, I still there are cities out there that are, you know, individual cities with hundreds of thousands more people than lived in Vermont that are still a struggle to get like good bookings that are worthwhile for artists to develop communities in, because there just isn't that willingness to come together. I mean, you're fighting a few forces nowadays that we didn't have back then, because it wasn't like a strong cell phone culture in Vermont, even when we had cell phones, just because the
Yeah,
service wasn't that great.
yeah,
But
that's a good point. Yeah,
and once we kind of got out of the house parties, it became barn parties and stuff like that. But I,
yeah,
I I just want to take 2 seconds. I want to give a shout out to Catherine Forbes. Hello, Catherine.
nice,
Awesome graphic designer in Nashville, website designer, and
nice.
she's pretty smart. On She had some really awesome early on like marketing uh concepts that caught my eye very early on, before people were doing a lot of what is kind of ubiquitous out there. She was ahead of the curve.
Nice. Right on.
And Tom asked how long we've been friends. So I guess if you want to say, we probably linked up around 2000,
Yeah, I guess
probably
so.
once you got there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's when Liquid Dead was really rolling and um it was routine,
Yeah.
show after show after show. It's like that's what we did all the
I
time.
mean, I don't even know if you can do what we did back then, where we just would take over Dibden Hall in a college auditorium, and play there 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, access to a public building. I mean, I know, I used to have that kind of access at St. Mike's. We would occasionally roll into the theater and on campus, and
Yeah.
we weren't like dragging any booze up there or anything like that, but everybody was in an elevated state of mind, and the band would play to all hours of the night. But uh
I
I
became
just I don't think that exists really that much anymore, as far as that type of
yeah,
open access.
yeah. I became good buddies, and I'm sure Trevor did too with the with everybody at Dibden, but mostly the security guard. Who made it easy enough to like go in. You just see us on stage and be like, "You guys just playing?" "Yep, dude, we're just playing," and just
Yeah.
rock on out. Yeah, yeah, we had the whole place to ourselves.
So what was the year when you kind of, when did Cash or Trade crystallize in your mind as an online platform?
So yeah, we're talking like 2000, and then we're work our way up to like 2004. There was Coventry, of course, which really summed up that whole like, almost decade of experience there of Northern Vermont, finishing at Coventry. And then, we were doing web design in Johnson, Vermont. And just, the goal was to build like an environmental business to help businesses become more sustainable. And Dusty and I were working towards that and realized that, like, no matter what we did, we were going to need to know the internet. So it was like early internet, and so we started learning the internet, and then did Liquid Dead's website, and like one website after another. Next thing we knew, we just had a career in doing websites and could snowboard as much as we wanted, and like grow a little weed, and like see our favorite music. So that was a good life. But in 2004, Fish stopped playing, and we, just we had enough local music, so we kind of just stayed local. We didn't really travel for music too much during that time. So from 2004 to 2009, Fish returns. And of course, those tickets sell out right away. And or 2008, right? When they went on sale. But they were just like $2,000 like a piece, like on the internet. And if you think early internet there, like everything was just getting started. I mean, Facebook started in 2004. And when we were building websites in the office, I remember my buddy was Ernie was always putting on Howard Stern. And Howard Stern, like I think StubHub was just getting started, and Howard Stern was moving to Sirius XM radio, so he was like huge, a lot of publicity around that, and he was promoting StubHub for tickets all the time, and we didn't think too much of it, but then fast forward 5 years, StubHub and platforms like it were like these main centric places of where you went for tickets, and they were astronomical. And we were
Yeah,
like, what the fuck happened? This doesn't feel like what it used to feel like, Used to stand in line at a box office. Maybe you'd wander through Filene's basement to like the back, right? To find like a Ticketmaster counter or something to buy tickets. And, maybe there was a broker in line buying like the maximum allotment or something. But now it was like Wild West. Nobody was policing it. They had bot programs, they had price matching software, like syndicating tickets back and forth with auto list. And it was just like took complete grips on the industry and would buy up all the tickets from the fans and just siphon them off over here. And these people who had nothing to do with the event or music or the industry or anything about it was taking all the money out of it. That
yeah. I
sucked.
always wonder it would be a really interesting investigation and expose to know the answer to this question. It's been said by many people that the secondary market exists because the primary market was asleep at the wheel when the technology came online. I'm not sure that that's exactly what happened.
Well,
Um,
it's
because there's a
hard.
lot of money to be made. I just was trying to uh, sell a Dead and Company ticket to the Sphere that I couldn't use, and I just wanted to get rid of it. And I put it on the primary resale. And when I bought the ticket, there was, let's see, roughly 25% fees on top. So I paid 25% fees. So when I went to resell it, they were taking uh I would say maybe 30% fees out of the price I was going to sell it for.
Mhm.
Plus, they were charging on top fees to the new buyer. So that's 3 rounds of fees they're picking up on one ticket purchase slash resale.
Mhm.
And that's not even, dynamic pricing or anything. That's just, a fan trying to get rid of their ticket that they don't want, can't use. So that
Yeah,
was that's my most recent, like, God damn it.
interesting. Yeah.
But
Yeah. In you know, ticketing's a complicated space, as you well know. But I never imagined it would be as complicated as it is. You come into it as a fan, you think this is the way it is, like why can't it be like this or whatever. But like, wow, once you start getting into all the people who are involved in an event, from promoter to management to artists to venue to venue owner to ticket company to secondary ticket company, like there's a lot of hands in the pot. Everyone's trying to make something great happen, but people are also trying to make money. And there's an aspect of it that sometimes is trying to make too much money. And that's
yeah,
usually that secondary side. So Yeah, we were just kind of like, you know what? Fuck this. Can't fans just like buy, sell, and trade tickets with each other at face value? Like, fuck all these, like, brokers and all this like business. So we were like, let's fucking build something. So I think it was like, the end of 2008, and Dusty and I just built this thing. It was fish centric. I mean, you could still pull it up on like archive.org, find like the oldest cash or trade. It's awesome to see. Um, but we just had fish tour dates, and we decided to make something kind of like Craigslist, where it had chronological listings, but mostly people could buy, sell, and trade tickets with each other at face value only. Um, and people had a profile to keep it social. So you were able to see real fans that you like knew or would see on lot and like build that community. And there was a messaging application so you could communicate and chat. And people would connect with old friends, but would also meet new friends. And then we built in like the friend feature so you could friend people. We really loved the social aspect. I mean, social media was just taking off. I mean, 2004, Facebook had started, but MySpace was already going. Um, so we kind of wanted to embody some of that with ticketing. And then we went on tour that summer, and we brought our Tacoma and slept in the back and brought our laptops and hit up Starbucks coffee shops, and we would set up tents in the lot, and a bulletin board with post-it notes. So it was like the low tech version. People were saying, this is what I have, this is what I want, here's my phone number, email, and people would like meet at the tent and trade tickets at face. We'd have the computer there if there was service to help get people online and promote the site. Um, and then we get ideas from people, and we would stop off at the next coffee shop and spend the mornings building those ideas into the website. And then we would go do the lot at night. And that's what we did that summer. And at the end of the summer, we
This
had,
was 2009, right?
this was 2009, summer
Yeah.
2009. Yep. So we finished off with about 5,000 users on the site, and people just really loved the idea. People wanted it to see it for sports, and like the ideas were just flooding in. Um, and it was cool. But we went back to Vermont and we continued web design, living life, and just ran this thing on the side for a hobby for like the next decade. And um it was great. But eventually I got tired of web design. Dusty scored a great marketing dev job with Ben and Jerry's. And I was kind of like, let's sell the web design firm. I think I can dedicate to this. There was like over 150,000 users. And I was like, maybe I can like make a real go at it. I started looking at other websites, other ticket sites, and I realized that like, look, like this isn't gonna like shut down the secondary industry, but like this is a fucking alternative. Like this has a place. And so we structured the company and raised a little capital and hired 8 people, and that's when it got going in 2019. And we started thinking about how we could connect more directly with the artists, events, and festivals, because we were face value. We weren't trying to be predatory. We weren't trying to see how much money we could extract from it, but instead how we could support the fan bases that worked with it. And that's when we partnered with like Summer Camp Music Fest. And that's when we found Billy Strings,
Yeah,
29.
the community nature of cash or trade is really the cornerstone of why it matters. Um, and I'm curious, like as you expanded into other bands and genres, were did you find sort of maybe pre-existing uh, groups of fans that were talking about this or wanted this but didn't have the service, and you just like you showed up and they're like, oh, this is what we've been wanting, you're here? Or was it really that where when you went into other bands and other genres, they didn't know what they needed until they saw it?
Well, yes and no. Sometimes we would introduce the idea to a new fan base and they'd hop on board, be like, this is amazing, you know? Other times, though, social communities on the internet were really building. So, Facebook, for example, and Facebook groups. And you'd almost always find a ticket group for an artist, you know? And that very same thing was happening where people would come together as real fans who were sort of in this like microcosm, you know, who would be moving tickets around amongst each other and trying to support one another. But Facebook's not really the adequate platform for it. It's always hard to like find what it is you're looking for. And then there's tons of scamming. And like it's not always like a lot of the time it's like straight up fraud. These days it's as far as like literal programs and bots just doing it. But there's also like a ton of what they call friendly fraud. People in the community trading tickets, but it's just like a misunderstanding. And like, no, like, you know, ticketing can be difficult. Like, you know, are they transferable yet? They're not transferable yet. I mailed them. Did you mail them too late? I didn't get them. Like, I'm leaving for the next week. I'm not going to be home when the tickets arrive. Like, blah, 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 blah. And these fights would start up in these groups and people would be like at each other's throats and admins would get involved and like you know and there were these communities you know so like you get to know these people and I mean in some ways it's cool it's like people gained pen pals a lot quicker and became friends with people. I mean, I'm still friends with a ton of people, like even in the fish community, who I haven't necessarily hung out with at a show, but like we've been talking online for like a decade, you know? So that stuff happened quite a bit, but there wasn't like this place where people could stay protected, like still communicate with like people in the community, but like make sure that there's some moderation and some protection and a process to follow. And I think cash or trade like just kind of fit well into that niche to kind of help supply um to solve that problem, I guess. And you know,
Yeah,
it's
the self-policing nature of the community was a good, you know, people, if you couldn't be a bad actor in that platform for long, if at
yeah,
all.
so seeing like social platforms being like, well, how do I moderate every single post or comment that anyone ever posts? Well, they weren't doing that, so they gave the tools to the members, right? You could report and flag certain things. And that's when we were like, you know, if we have to have a support team literally reviewing every single post that goes up, you're going to see a lot less posts. And that's not going to scale, and there's going to be no inventory, and it's not, you know, it's not going to work. So we realized that let the community police it with a flagging feature. So we gave like a number of things, you know, mostly is it above face, but does it match policy? And then like the community could participate in what they saw there and flag it and have it removed. And then our support team would review it and communicate. And you know, 90% of the time it's like, hey dude, like this is the scene here. Here are our policy, and people are like, "Oh, geez, like I didn't quite realize. Like, well, let me adjust that." And they're like, "Yep, cool," and they put it back up, and then it goes back live. So that's turned out really well, and yeah, it's been a tremendous experience, a wild ride. Yeah.
What is there? Do you have a gold standard of what face is for the platform?
Well, face value back then was a little more concrete than what it is
Yeah.
today. Um, so that's become difficult and it's become more fluid, mostly because of dynamic pricing. Um, and you know, there was this moment of like not accepting dynamic pricing, and yet the whole like if I could speak on it for a moment, like having been a fan, nobody ever likes to see their tickets increase in price. I mean, I still want my fish ticket to be 1875 like it was for Amherst Mass in 94. you know.
Yeah.
Um, but they're not that anymore. And once the whole, I guess, Ticketmaster was probably first to build in platinum ticketing, nobody was psyched about that. But there's this concept where instead of a scalper pulling those tickets, taking all the money, and have nothing to do with the event, now they were able to put for sale up a percentage of the venue um, at a dynamically priced market value. So when people would go buy those tickets, then like it wouldn't incentivize a broker to buy them because there wouldn't be very much margin to make money on. So it keeps the brokers out, cost more for the fans who want to buy those seats. Hopefully they're good seats. Um, but the money goes back to like the whole pool. It's ticket revenue. So the artist, the venue, the promoter, everyone involved can actually benefit from some of that expense or some of that profit. So with cash or trade, there was this moment of like ban all platinum tickets, like this is face value only. And then there's people who are buying platinum tickets who didn't scalp them. They didn't go to a secondary. They bought them from the primary market. They were happy to spend that price, and then they couldn't go. And they're like longtime cash or trade users. And they're like, dude, like I can't sell my ticket. Like there's no middleman. There's no like sketchiness here. I'm not profiting. I want to be able to sell the ticket. Like if somebody else wants it, it's face value. It came from the primary market with no middleman, with no markup. So it's just what that seat sold for. And then it became this whole like introspection, right? Like, okay, if Madonna seats fourth row are $800, is that okay? Like, so wait a minute, are we going to start like being like, no, no, these seats are okay and those seats aren't, and this price is okay, and this, like, wait a minute here, like, this industry's been happening for a long time. Artists do different things. Fish made it easy because they tried to sell the whole place at the same price. And over the years, we know that changes a little bit with floor seats versus lawn. But a lot of artists never did that. It's different sections were different prices. And then you're like at SPAC and you're like, I'm here and here's a little rope and here's somebody right there. That roped off seat is this much money and this seat is this much money. And like, okay, so how's that any different? Anyway, that became like a real moment. In the end, we realized that if you buy tickets from the primary market, you're not marking it up. You're not buying it from a secondary, no broker in the middle. That's a face value ticket. That's what you checked out at. Whether it's a Madonna seat that's $800 in the fourth row, or whether it's a dynamically priced ticket here, that's what you checked out with. That's how much that seat cost at that time. And you should be able to prove that to someone on cash or trade, showing your receipt and saying, this is what I paid. Here's a platinum ticket, and nobody's profiting, and they can exchange that too. So that's what we did with dynamically priced. But
Yeah,
it's a
there's a
moving target.
question. Yeah, there's a question. What happens when somebody tries to scalp on cash or trade?
So
I,
the ticket post usually gets flagged. Support team reviews it and either communicates with them to adjust the price of it, or they get banned
right.
if they
Yeah,
don't.
I mean, I've seen a few threads of like complete and utter internet destruction when somebody gets called out. So I could
Yeah.
vouch for that.
Well, what we're excited about is the next generation. We are about to launch our new app, beta.cashortrade.org. We're very excited about it. We've been working on it since COVID, really. I thought everything was over. I thought we were closing our doors during COVID. But I like hedged some bets and I started hiring like a UI UX designer and then a front end designer, and like literally was taking steps, not knowing if this industry was going to come back and when, and if I was just taking some risks. But it turned out to be the right one, and it took a while to get the right team in place. But we're excited to roll that out very soon, within a few weeks. And with that, or coming right after that, is connecting with a number of primary ticket companies. We're working on API integrations. So when somebody lists a ticket on Cash or Trade, not only can we validate it with the direct order of the ticket company that bought it from, but we can validate the price right in the UI.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
that way we can keep it at face in the UI, and you can mark it below, but you can't mark it above. So we're excited for that. And there's a lot coming over the next like few months here for Cash or Trade.
That's great. Another
Yeah.
question is, what do you think about the Ticket Act? And I guess
So yeah, so we saw each other at Neva. Um, and I was
I know
like,
I think we have a little divergent view on the Ticket Act, but overall, any progress is good progress. But
yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting spot for some of these ticket acts too. Because, well, just for some of the rest of the group who hasn't heard about it, the Fix the Ticks organization is drafting legislation in the House and Congress for better ticketing. And Cash or Trade has been a part of that for like 16 months or so. And we've participated in like every one of those meetings and communicated with everybody about the industry. And we're one of the only secondary, I mean, we are like the only secondary site that's in that group, because we are trying to work with the event. So we've participated in offering up definitions and certain language in the bill and getting everybody's feedback to kind of structure it. Um, the Tickets Act just passed the House, so it's a huge step. One of the and then there's the Fans First Act in the Senate, which 250 artists have already signed on to, and it's making some major steam, and we feel like that's going to pass in September. These acts um, help stop speculatory ticketing, where brokers say they have tickets. Have you ever gone on a secondary site to go buy tickets, like even before the on sale, and you see the tickets listed? You're like, they didn't go on sale yet, dude. How do you have tickets? You don't. And they just mark them up at ridiculous prices so they can get everyone else who comes on the platforms to also mark theirs up. Oh, people are getting $2,000. Oh, I'm going to get $2,000. And it raises the entire market value of those tickets. And it's like, it's inflating it, and it's not necessarily true. It starts to shake itself out over the next little bit of time. But this is very predatory to the event and everyone who's putting it on. So the Tickets Act, the Fans First Act, they're trying to stop speculatory ticketing. We're trying to stop there's deceptive marketing. There's a lot of websites that act like the primary that aren't. So people are like, wait a minute, I thought I bought it from the primary, and they totally didn't. So there's a number of items in the bill, but the goal is to protect the fans, but also to protect like those who are putting on the event. But as we said, like, it's complicated and there's a lot of people involved. So like it might be good for one part of the industry, but it might, it could become difficult for other parts, and it's never just an easy choice. But I
yeah, I
think
think, I
it's
mean,
better.
where I come down on the artist rep I mean, banning speculation, that is core number one, must happen. And if it goes through, will be a huge win for all parties, no matter what. Same
Absolutely.
with the deceptive websites that that's, they that do all sorts of weird stuff and beats SEO ranking and drop cookies on you and just, just some of that really super sketchy stuff.
Yeah,
And
like the domain name of a venue or something, where it's like
right.
you're taking like the name of a venue, like .com or something. Like,
Or they'll drop weird, like you can click on an area of a website where you think you're going to go into a real portal, and you're getting deflected to uh, a non primary site. So you don't
mhm.
even know. Like some, your grandparents want to buy their granddaughter tickets to a concert because she asked them. These are not heavy internet using demographics, and they're just like, oh, okay, here, wow, I didn't know that these tickets were going to be $900 a piece. I love you, I will do this here. And then they're
Yeah.
not even, and then come to find out they were speculators, and they show up and actually these tickets don't even work. And I mean, we generally have inventory available in the event of dire situations like that when we do shows.
Mm.
We keep a tiny emergency, like uh little Susie shows up and her tickets don't scan correctly because she got hoodwinked. But um the one that's the one that I'm in a gray area about is the all-in pricing. And not because I don't want all-in pricing, it's because I think people misunderstand the value of it. I understand, I want to see the price and know the price, but what that does is obscure the artist's ability to show you what they really want to charge versus what they're being forced to charge due to the fee structures that exist. And again, like fees exist for, I mean, talk about a long podcast. We can go into why
Oh,
fees are what they are. But one
absolutely.
of the things, that's very I think confusing to the consumer is there's sometimes the artist is changing the fees. Most of the time, not. Sometimes the promoter is changing the fees. Sometimes not. Sometimes the building is changing the fees. Sometimes not. Overall, Ticketmaster is charging fees, but other parties do control what they want, except for when you get into the resale world. And then that's really when you start to see uh, primary resale fees. That is under control of the primary. So
Of
and
the
the artist,
secondary. Of the secondary.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. So that's when some of these primary platforms are pushing for, the transferability of tickets, that is really the core of the concept. Is a ticket a license or a piece of property?
Mhm.
And for the artist, we would want the license argument. And the reason is, like, this is a license much like a ski ticket, where we are giving you permission to attend and there are ground rules to it. But at the end, we own the access to the event.
Mhm.
On the flip side, yes, there is a consumer value to a ticket being a piece of property, but as soon as a ticket is a piece of property, it's easy for it to be scalped. It's easy for it to be manipulated. Um, and then the idea of transferability, and um, and this is like the world we're sort of moving into, where will tickets be transferable or not? And there was the whole I forget what it was called, but the secondary market started a nonprofit organization to petition states to say it's fans' rights to make sure that we can transfer our tickets. And a lot of low information politicians in some states like Illinois and Colorado, they're like, wow, this sounds really cool. Look at this. These are fan first. Yeah, we should be able to do whatever we want with our tickets. Well, that was being pushed by the secondary market. And the
Mhm.
states that you look at, a state that allows transferability, and NITO, National Organization of Independent Talent, which is a sort of a sister organization to NEVA.
Yep.
We put out a big report, which I would suggest everybody go check out. And I should have had the link ready, but I don't. where we showed that states that restricted transfers, the prices of tickets were on average much lower than states that allowed transferring their tickets.
Yeah.
And then um, and then I think we started to talk a little bit about how you're going to be able to work with primaries to be able to take advantage of that protection.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like us being secondary, I believe a fan should do what they want with their ticket, you know? But I recognize that saying that allows people to go scalp their ticket, you know? So what we want to do is work more directly with the event and think of it as a license that can be transferred through cash or trade because we are providing a face value service. So our next step is to provide a face value ticket exchange technology, not just to the primary ticket companies, so they don't have to like take on that lift, but to the event who's putting it on. And what we're finding is we're partnering more and more, not only with just artists, but festivals, venues too, who are saying, like, this is interesting. I just want to know that if people can't go, that they have a place that they can go sell. And by the way, then I don't have to offer a refund, right? So if they're not going to offer refunds, and sometimes your show's not sold out. So if you're offering refunds, the show's not sold out, you're like trying to make money out. And to keep in mind, like a lot of people don't understand the industry, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars out the door before the event even begins or before a ticket even gets sold. The amount of payout to vendors, promoters are taking massive risks. I mean, it's an industry like hats off. Thank you. Thank you, promoters, for doing what you
Yeah,
do.
it's been said it's the most complicated form of gambling there is.
Right? And they have to sell all these. So yeah, so by cash or trade, providing a resale platform, we can offer an opportunity for a fan who can't go to go sell their ticket. By the way, selling on cash or trade, there is no fee. It's free to sell. It's the only ticket platform where it's free to sell your ticket. And then the venue is like, yeah, this is great because I don't have to offer the refund. Cash or trade will handle the resale, and I get to fill my event, and I get to align with a face value brand. Like like when we partnered with Billy and partnered with Tyler Childers, like the fans who came out to speak about it were like, "You're a class act." Like thank you for protecting us. Like this is what we've been waiting for. Like we started seeing these tweets and these posts, and we realized that this type of business model can actually benefit the organism, the artist, the venue, and the fan all at the same time. So yeah, and then just quickly, I know we're getting there. Fees. I mean, again, we could go on forever here. But yes, I'm glad you brought up the fees and all-in pricing. People don't realize that as you drew, there's a negotiation every single time. And every event is going to have a slightly different negotiation. Oh, you take the merch, I'll take the door, or I'll get the beer prices, or this or that. And often that plays into what the primary ticket fee is. And whether it's Ticketmaster or any other ticket site, they get trashed for the fee. And the fee is only a percentage of what the primary ticket company actually gets themselves, because often the rest of these venue fees or whatever it might be get lumped in. So when they say all in pricing, I'm like, interesting. How transparent should they be in that list? Because when you see this much for towels and this much for whatever else, like I don't know how a fan's gonna actually feel.
Well, the
So
big one is like the venues that take the upfront money from the ticketing companies, because that's those are the fees that as an artist or a promoter you can't. You go into a building, you rent a building, or you book a show there, and it's baked in. The venue is like, I can't, even if we wanted to lower the fees, which I am constantly berating buildings, and the team that we work with for promoters are very receptive to our needs on fees, so we're constantly Like Billy is all about lower ticket prices, lower the fees, do everything you can. So it's a um, huge part of my job to keep an eye on that stuff. But you come to buildings and they're like, well, uh, and this runs into here. It gets even more complicated when it's a municipal building. And like, well, the guy that was the GM for the building back in 2002, who hasn't been here for 10 years, he cut a deal with a ticketing company to make himself look great in that election year, uh, and got this big check from them, but they have a 20-year contract on the building at this fee structure in order to pay off that check. And you can't do anything about it. So in those cases, it's really tough to, and that's why sometimes the only ability I have as an agent is to not play the building.
Mm,
Um, but sometimes the buildings are just, you know, sometimes you just got to bite the bullet because it's the right place for the artist to play. And
yeah,
so you just try to make it as affordable as you can with the fans.
yeah, yeah. I mean, also just like when you go to these events, man, and you like look at the stage and you see all the big like Mack trucks out back, and like, dude, look
Yeah,
around. This isn't cheap to put on. And like,
no,
I mean, I know like a bunch of where we come from, we're people who like to go to many shows, right? But a lot of people will go to one show, and like it's their night out. And if you spend 120 bucks or whatever on a ticket for your night out. Like, I realize that may seem like a lot today. There's inflation has made like what events cost 30% more to put on than what they used to. Like,
everything, trucking,
I mean,
catering,
these
everything.
these are massive events, and you're managing thousands of people to do it in a safe and orderly way so everyone can have a great time for like a handful of hours. People just I also think need to understand like the whole scope because it's a lot to do these things and like I said, there's a ton of risk out the door each time. And I just think there's a lot that you and I see that the average fan doesn't. And I never saw that, until I got into ticketing, and I was like, fucking A. And
Yeah,
like I've talked to other ticketing executives, and we all are like kind of like, fuck tickets. It's just like I wouldn't wish the ticketing industry on anyone. It's so complicated. And in the end, we just want to get fans into the show for a price that they can afford without feeling like they got ripped off, keeping like morale high, having the event like go off without a hitch so they can do it again, bring people back. And getting back to our roots, like I'm a coder. I grew up learning how to code websites. But I loved live music. And I was also grew up as like an activist. And when I realized that I can use the computer as a tool to help change people's lives, that was it for me. And when you go to an event and that guitarist plays that note and the hair stands up on your neck and you just feel the chills. Like some of these events are transcendental, you know? You think about your life, you know? And you come out of there and you're just like you're uplifted and you're a different person. And you know, those events, I think the arts are important in human lives. And if we can sit behind a computer and do some code to help make the whole experience feel like a blessing and not a curse, then like that's why I'm in it. And if I can like
yeah,
somehow make a living and be able to support my staff to do it so we can make more and more people happy, uh that's fucking awesome. That's a dream, isn't it? I mean,
yeah. No, and same for my, you, there's commerce to it, but you want the artist to get their art out. I mean, there is no art without an audience, right? And so you need to, I see my role is just getting the artist in front of as many people as they can in a financially sustainable way, and that definitely plays into who I work with. Like I choose the artists I work with that have this mentality that we have. Like, if you
Mm.
don't think like this, I'm not the right guy for you. You know,
Oh, yeah,
if you want to
absolutely.
jack your price, you want to jack your prices up. If you want, you know, if you want to constantly like overcharge and platinum this and VIP that, I'm not the right guy. But um, there are lots of artists out there that think this way, and and are making meaningful music. So
Yeah, I mean, it's like, economics, right? Capitalism, capitalism definitely goes for the short term, cut all the trees right now, make all the money, or cut a little bit and grow some of the trees back so you can cut it again and make it last a lot longer. So there's two ways to think about it. And I feel like the same thing with this industry or any industry is that like customer lifetime value, if you can keep it at like a good price and have the best fan experience, right? Like the whole goal of putting on an event is to create the best fan experience at the price that it is. Then those people are likely going to return. And that builds that community, builds that love, and builds that lifetime value for again and again and again. And I think that's what a lot of artists do over time. Or you could try to cut all the trees today, you know, and then there's no more trees for tomorrow. So it's like any industry, I guess. But
well, and it comes down to the type of music too. I mean, there are artists that are career artists that are going to be doing, they have an arc and they grow throughout the decades. Then there are some artists that just hit and they got a record and it's time and the
yeah,
record is now. And there's a certain attitude, I'm sure, and not every artist is the same. But when you see it, you can see it. It's like, okay, this artist is capitalizing on a moment in time and they're going to just take everything they possibly can take at the moment. And you know, it's what they want to do. So I'm not passing judgment. It's just not, I think, what we value in our relationships with our partners.
yeah. I think I'm glad you just said like the word judgment. I came in with an activist culture, creating cash or trade for face value for fans, very judgmental on like what everyone, how things should be, keeping things at face. But the more you learn about the industry at large and the complicated pieces of it all, I am no longer judgmental. I sort of understand that, like, somebody might do this and somebody might do that, and I might have an opinion about this is better for fans than that. But at the end of the day, everyone's trying to like make it happen, you know, and some days you might be able to make it happen this way, but like as you said, like other states, other venues, you might not be able to do the same thing here that you did over there. And it's just not as easy as it all seems, is what I've learned anyway.
No, it sure isn't.
Yeah. It's so great to catch up, man. Like, not just to catch up about life, but to really get into the industry together because I love like your perspective of it and like where I sit too and how we like, come together in it all. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's been a great talk, and um, it's uh, uh, it's great always connecting with friends that are fighting the good fight out there, because it's worth it. I know I make my job harder for myself, but it's always worth it.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Pat. Good to have.
Hey,
Guys,
Tom.
hey, I'm back. That was terrific. I could have let this go on for another hour. It's fascinating hearing, what you all are doing, and really to me is the human side of all of this. It's really fascinating. Brando, I salute you for taking this on. You're fighting against two of the most immutable forces in the history of the world, and that is supply and demand and greed. And they're immutable.
Thanks,
So
Tom.
God bless you and keep doing what you're doing. Pat, I want to learn more about you and all the cool things that you've been doing. What your artist has done the last 2 nights in Grand Rapids, Michigan is certainly noteworthy. You want to brief the audience real quickly on what happened up there the last 48 hours?
Well, Billy was a guest with Fish over the past couple nights at Grand Rapids, and I'm biased, but it was a really magical thing, and I think something that only happens when you put love first. That's all I can say about it.
Well, the remarkable thing of that to you all out there that don't follow Fish very carefully or closely is that's very rare for Fish to have a guest, let alone for more than a song, maybe, but 2 nights in a row for about 6 songs each night, unprecedented. So I'm so sick I wasn't there. Had several that were there. Anyway, to the
Well,
audience, I promised you would leave today more inspired than you arrived. I think we delivered on that for you. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your work in this business and making it better for all of us. Keep doing what you're doing. All right.
thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Thanks, Pat. Good to
All
catch
right,
up.
guys, have a great day.
Later.